And as a result, anybody who is an enemy of Putin has got that image in their mind as well. And nobody wants to say anything because they don't want to have their private jets blown out of the sky. And so I don't think that if the Putin regime ends, I don't think it's going to end because of one of these guys. I think it'll end because they raise the price of bread. And all of a sudden, a bunch of people are at the starvation point and they've got nothing to lose and they just get angry. And then they shoot people who get angry as they're demonstrating. And instead of people going back to their apartments, more people come out. That's how these regimes end. If there's a mass uprising, there's nothing Putin can do about it. He can go around and assassinate individual enemies, but he can't stop a mass uprising. But nobody knows if and when a mass uprising will ever happen in Russia.
Keep your calls coming, 0345 6060 973 if you'd like to ask Bill Browder a question or if you just have a comment on anything that we've discussed. Let's go to David in Enfield. David, hi.
Good evening. Good evening, Bill.
Hello.
Bill, what role did Putin play in Brexit, in your opinion?
Well, that's a really excellent question. So, first of all, let's just frame the whole issue. Putin doesn't like big countries or conglomerations of countries that can stand up to him. He doesn't like the United States because it's a bigger country. He doesn't like NATO, which is a bigger grouping of military forces. And he doesn't like the European Union because individual countries are powerless to stand up to Putin, but the European Union is pretty powerful. And so from Putin's perspective, the more you can weaken the European Union, the better it is for him. So one of the most important countries in the European Union was the United Kingdom. So you can imagine that Putin had every interest in Brexit happening, not because he wants to he cares particularly about us, but he cares very profoundly about weakening the European Union. And so it's certain to me that Putin would have done everything he could to make sure that Brexit happened. And what does that mean? That means flooding the Twitter and Facebook and all this kind of stuff with propaganda. That means potentially supporting people or organizations that want to leave the European Union, because from his perspective, that's good.
Is there any actual evidence that that support was tangible?
Well, in terms of Russian bots and trolls and all that kind of stuff, you could see it.
But in terms of funding?
In terms of funding, we don't know for sure. And coming back to my comment about law enforcement here, so in the United States, when there was credible allegations of Russian involvement in the U.S. election, they had a guy named Robert Mueller, special counsel, former head of FBI. He conducted a massive investigation. Here there were credible allegations of Russian interference, and there was nothing. And so we'll never know.
Let's go to Charles, who is a new caller from Kensington. Hi, Charles.
Yes, my thing is your guest is saying that when Trump comes to power, there will be disaster everywhere, and that's what he thinks. But the thing is that Trump has been in power for 4 years before, and we have seen Trump's presidency that when he was in power, there wasn't any war anywhere in this world. All wars were ceased, and there was some peace in the world. But now, the change of government, and there's war everywhere. Don't you think that when Trump come back to power, all these kind of things will now get back to its normal way, and then all these things will stop? Since he's a businessman, he thinks about business, not war, killing people everywhere. It doesn't help the world. What do you think?
Well, that's a very optimistic projection. I don't see how...
He has been there before, and we've seen it before.
Well, I'm not sure that I would attribute the lack of war to Trump being president. I think that there was all sorts of things that Trump did that many people would disagree with. He basically he pulled out of Syria and allowed the Russians to go into Syria. He basically he began the process of withdrawing from Afghanistan and basically cut a deal which Biden had to do, which allowed the Taliban to take over Afghanistan. If you're an Afghan woman right now, I don't think you'd be too happy with what Trump did over there. I think it's a much more complicated story, but most importantly, let's just take Trump's his biggest foreign policy sort of promise, which is to pull out of NATO. So NATO is an organization which was formed to protect all NATO allies from war. And so if he pulls out of NATO, all of a sudden, Putin feels a lot more comfortable going and attacking other NATO countries because America is not going to be there to protect them. And I can imagine that Putin would be really happy to go into some NATO countries. He looks at...
But the thing is, whenever you put away from NATO, there wasn't any war. Nobody attacked anyone. You saw it. And the world was in peaceful environment. And then now we came back together as NATO again. And there's war everywhere. And NATO is not helping anyone, but just supplying arms, killing people, killing children, killing women, killing everyone. And what's the point of we living in this world? If everybody's going to die this way, then we better know that there's nothing for us to live for.
Well, Trump didn't pull out of NATO before. NATO has been around. It continues to be around. But I guess what I'm saying is that he is threatening to pull out of NATO. And if he does, I think that Putin has pretty much said it. He's going to roll into Poland and Estonia and Latvia.
That's another guess wish that you're also saying. I'm also guessing wish that Trump will not, when Trump is in power, all these wars will stop. So.
Well, I hope you're right, Charles, if he does win, but I'm not wholly... I mean, he has got a point, though, because, I mean, Trump was not a warmonger in his first term, was he? I mean, you could say that he did more to bring about peace in the Middle East than Obama did, given the Abraham Accords. Tried to come to an accommodation with North Korea, didn't work, but he made the effort. It is possible to make a case for that Trump's foreign policy was not the disaster that a lot of people think it was.
Well, I mean, it's you could also say that if you were General Soleimani in Iran, he bombed you out of the sky. I mean, Trump is not some kind of peace loving guy. And I guarantee you that if Trump was provoked, he would do just the same as any American leader. I think it would be very naive to think that Trump is somehow the peace president. That just doesn't ring true to me.
Somebody's texted here. Does Bill know that you voted for Brexit, Iain? I don't know whether he does or not, but I can assure you that Vladimir Putin did not influence my vote, and I doubt very much. I mean, look, okay, there was only a 4% margin in it, but can anyone genuinely believe that that Putin and the Russians affected 4% of the vote? I personally would doubt it very much.